I never wanted kids. In fact, I made it clear to my husband, Tom, from the very beginning of our relationship that I wanted to be child free. He agreed, saying that he had no interest in being a father either. It was one of the things that brought us together and made us feel like we were on the same page. Tom and I have been together for 5 years, and we've always been happy with our decision not to have kids. We enjoy traveling, trying new restaurants, and spending time with our friends. We both have demanding jobs. He's a software developer, and I'm a marketing executive, so we often spend our evenings relaxing at home, watching TV, or reading. My relationship with my parents has always been complicated. They're very wealthy and often try to use their money to control me. They've never approved of my decision not to have kids, and they've made it clear that they want me to give them grandchildren. When they announced that they were going to leave a huge trust fund for their future grandkids, I knew it was just another attempt to manipulate me. When I told Tom about the trust fund, he surprised me by saying that he thought it was a great idea. He started dropping hints about how nice it would be to have a little one running around and how we could use the money for their education and future. I was furious. I felt like he had lied to me about something so important. We fought about it constantly, but he wouldn't budge. Despite our arguments, Tom and I tried to keep our daily routine as normal as possible. We still went to work, cooked dinner together, and went to bed at the same time every night. But there was an underlying tension that I couldn't shake. I felt like I couldn't trust him anymore, like he was going to change his mind about everything we had agreed on. I started to feel like I was losing control of my life. My parents were trying to control me with their money, and Tom was trying to control me with the idea of children. I felt like I was suffocating. I needed to talk to someone to get some advice about what to do, so I called my cousin's brother, Ryan. He had always been a great listener, and I knew he would be able to help me figure things out. Ryan and I talked for hours, and he listened patiently as I poured out all my frustrations and fears. He suggested that maybe it was time for me to take control of my life and stop letting others dictate what I should do. That's when Ryan came up with a plan to teach Tom a lesson. He suggested that I buy a fake baby doll that cried all the time, and we would make Tom think that we had a real baby. It would be hilarious and very real, and we would be able to show Tom what it was really like to have a child. At first, I was hesitant. It seemed like a cruel prank, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go through with it. But Ryan convinced me that it was just a harmless joke and that it would help Tom see things from a different perspective. So I went online and ordered a realistic-looking baby doll that cried and made all the usual baby noises. Ryan helped me set up a schedule, and we planned out the entire prank. I was nervous, but I was also excited to see how it would play out. When the doll arrived, I carefully placed it in the bassinet in our bedroom, making sure it was hidden from view. Ryan came over that evening, and we waited for Tom to come home from work. When Tom walked in the door, I greeted him with a kiss and a smile, trying to act as naturally as possible. We had dinner together, and I could see that Tom was distracted. He kept glancing over at the bassinet, and I could tell that he was curious. Finally, after we had finished eating, Tom couldn't take it any more. "What's in the bassinet?" he asked. I feigned ignorance, acting as though I had no idea what he was talking about. "What bassinet?" I said, trying to suppress a smile. Tom didn't fall for it, though. He got up from the table and walked over to the bassinet. When he saw the baby doll lying there, he froze. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at Tom and told him that it was our child. I could see the shock and confusion on his face as he processed what I had just said. It looked eerily realistic, and I started carrying it around with me everywhere I went. I even took it to bed with me at night. At first, Tom thought it was ridiculous. He laughed and made fun of me for carrying around a doll like a child, but then something strange started to happen. He began to treat the doll like it was real. He would coo at it and talk to it, even taking it out for walks in the park. I was shocked. I had never seen him act this way before. It was like he had been transformed into a different person. But at the same time, I felt like I had regained control. The doll was a way for me to show Tom how ridiculous his obsession with children was, and it was working. Despite the strange turn our relationship had taken, we still tried to maintain some sense of normalcy. We still went to work, cooked dinner together, and went to bed at the same time every night with the baby doll. But the tension was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. Little did I know that things were about to take an even stranger turn. One day I came home from work to find Tom sitting on the couch staring at the TV with a blank expression. He didn't even look up when I walked in the door. I could tell that something was wrong. "Tom, what's going on?" I asked, sitting down next to him. He didn't answer at first. He just kept staring at the screen. Finally, he turned to me with tears in his eyes. "I can't do it. I can't be a father," he said. "I'm sorry for everything I've said and done. I was being selfish and only thinking about the money. But when I held that doll, I realized that I didn't want a real child. I'm sorry for hurting you." He stared at the baby doll with a look of pure disgust on his face. He turned to me and said, "I don't want kids. I never did. I don't care about the money. I just want to be with you." I was stunned. I had never seen Tom cry before, let alone admit that he had been wrong. I didn't know what to say. "It's okay," I finally managed to say. "I understand. We can go back to the way things were before." But things didn't go back to the way they were before. The tension between us had been building for too long, and it was like a dam had finally burst. We argued constantly, fighting about everything from money to our future to the color of the sky. One night, after a particularly bad fight, I found myself sitting alone in our apartment, wondering what had gone wrong. I had thought that Tom and I were on the same page about everything, but it turned out that we weren't. I realized then that I had been trying so hard to control everything in my life that I had lost sight of what was really important. I didn't need to have children to be happy, and I didn't need to worry about my parents' money. All I needed was to be true to myself and be with someone who loved and respected me for who I was. The next day, I sat down with Tom and we had a long talk. We apologized for everything we had said and done, and we made a plan to work on our communication and our relationship. It wasn't going to be easy, but we were willing to try. As for the doll, I packed it away in a box and put it in the closet. It was a strange reminder of a difficult time in our relationship, but also a symbol of the fact that sometimes the most unexpected things can bring people together. Update 1. As time went on, my parents started to up the amount of the trust fund they had promised for our future children. They did it subtly at first. They would mention it in passing during phone calls or family gatherings, but it was clear what they were trying to do. They were trying to pressure us into having children. I knew that my parents meant well, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still trying to control my life. Tom and I had come to the decision that we didn't want to have children just because of money or family pressure. We wanted to do it on our own terms. One day, I received a call from my mother. She told me that they had decided to increase the amount of the trust fund yet again, and that they were going to make it a substantial amount. I could hear the excitement in her voice as she told me the new number, but it only made me feel more uneasy. I tried to explain to my mother that money wasn't the reason why we were hesitant to have children, but she didn't seem to understand. She kept insisting that it was the right thing to do and that we would regret it if we didn't have children. I hung up the phone, feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. I knew that my parents loved me, and I didn't want to let anyone else control our lives. In the end, we decided not to have kids. We realized that we didn't need to conform to society's expectations in order to be happy. We could create our own path and live our lives on our own terms. We didn't let anyone else's opinions or money sway us from our decision to not have children. NTA. I think it's really unfair for her husband to change his mind about having children just because of a trust fund. She was upfront about her feelings from the beginning, and he should have respected that. The fake crying doll was genius. It drilled some sense into him about what having a real child is like. Next story. My husband and I haven't been baby-free in months. My husband is a stay-at-home dad, and I work a few hours a week, but I'm mostly at home as well. Financially, we're stable enough, but not where we could afford daycare or a babysitter. As every parent knows, a break from the baby is much needed every once in a while. He's had a cold, so extra cranky on top of entering typical toddler phases. Between bleeding ears and being touched out, our nerves are shot to say the least. I asked my mom at 11 a.m. if she could please babysit for 4 hours so we could have a break. She said yes. My mom is our only family capable of babysitting within a 2-hour radius. She lives 15 minutes from us. However, despite her constant assurances, she's rarely available. She never says no directly, but will beat around until I say never mind. Yesterday I was desperate, had a migraine, needed to clean, and just needed to be quiet for a bit. She insisted he have a nap first. Logical, agreed. He slept an hour, so I let her know I was coming. She said okay, then called back and said she had to step out and she'd be back in a bit, but I can bring him over because I had a key. I said I'd wait till she got back. That was at 12 p.m. I called at 1 to ask if she was home. She said no. Getting food, I said okay, I'd go in another hour. She said okay. At 2, I let her know I was heading her way. We actually get there at 3, giving her leeway since she hadn't responded. She's still not home. I video chat her. She's at someone's house. I told her if she didn't actually want to babysit, she really could have said that. She says, no, I do. I just hadn't seen her friend all year. So I stopped by to say hi and got caught up talking. I'm coming. So we waited. She shows up at 4:30. I'm upset. Migraine on 100. Baby's extra cranky. Nothing accomplished. I politely let her know the time frame to do what we needed has passed because dinner and bedtime was coming, and I still needed to get groceries, so there was no point in her keeping him. I gathered his stuff to leave while she's sarcastically apologizing for taking too long. She'd already told her husband my son was coming and he wanted to see him when he got off work, just making it seem like it wasn't a big deal. I turned and told her this was a complete waste of the day. I should have never asked her because she's unreliable, even in emergencies, which has happened twice, where she's agreed to babysit, then calls within the hour for me to get him. And I won't ever ask her to babysit again because it's obvious she has no interest in doing so, but would rather lead me on about it than outright say no. She gets offended and starts a tirade, but I'm over it, so I leave. Later, she and her husband messaged me saying I was being harsh and she wants to be part of her grandson's life. I wasn't being fair. I'm wondering if I was being an a-hole because I was upset at that moment, so am I the a-hole here? Edit. Character limit got me, but I should add every time I say I'd save to find a babysitter, my mom would insist the family needed to keep him. I kind of agreed due to the crap you hear about babysitters abusing kids, and I know my mom wouldn't do that. I had money to pay her to keep him, and she knew this. So this isn't a case of I want free babysitting from her. Edit. There's a few people asking about my husband and the work situation. My husband is disabled and he's had recent medical scares, the mentioned emergencies, that would not be good to leave him alone with the baby for a typical full workday. We tag team our son so we get individual mini breaks as needed at home, but there's never not a moment our son is not within our hearing or line of sight, honestly. The bills and household child necessities are covered. My working helps out with that as well. Overall, the reduced hours I work helps my family's needs, but it doesn't constitute being able to do daycare. I don't ask for babysitting often at all because I realize he's ours and we chose to have him and we're happy to raise him. But again, a break every once in a while is needed. I've come to the conclusion we'll save up and try to plan so we won't burn out instead of relying on my mom. Final edit. I truly appreciate the feedback and advice here. I also realize I wrote a lot, so it's understandable there are a few who've missed some points I've addressed while giving me their feedback. I apologize for that confusion. It was a lot going on and hard to compact necessary information. Using the advice given going forward, I know what to expect and what actions I need to take. Again, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to read and comment. NTA. If she has agreed to babysit, then obviously it needs to be done at the time it is useful, not 4.5 hours after the initial agreed time. Also, AITA hates the idea of being able to rely on families, so be prepared for a bunch of people who are just furious at the idea that you'd expect a bit of help on occasion. NTA, you said exactly what I would have said. I'm child-free and typically side with the family in these scenarios, but it's too far to tell someone you'll babysit over and over and then not be there when you say you will. There has to be a point where you decide you can't keep trying. ETA, I knew some people would bring up not expecting free childcare because it's something I typically say to people. However, I don't see that as an issue. You asked her, didn't demand to expect it, and it doesn't seem to be something you ask of her often. Also, the issue here is more the fact that she wasn't there when she said she would be, not that you're complaining that she should be babysitting for you for free. Next story. Me, 49, and my wife, 45, have been married for 5 years. I have a stepdaughter, H, 22. She used to live in student housing but is currently taking a year off school and therefore isn't eligible anymore. Her school, workplace, etc. are a few hours' drive from here. I own an apartment around that area, so we're letting H stay there. I don't charge her any rent. My sister, 40, lost her job last year and works at a new place, which pays much lower. She lives with her boyfriend and my 14-year-old niece, and they're struggling with the rent. They like extravagance, so this is hard on an entire family. I want to offer the apartment to my sister's family to stay in since there are 3 people who actually need it. They're on board with this and we've talked to H. That obviously it won't be immediately and we'll give her some time to find another place, so my sister can stay there. He got upset and said if she really has to move, it's going to be hard. I offered to help her find somewhere, but said that this is our decision. My wife isn't happy with this and said I'm being unfair to H. Edit. The extravagance comment doesn't mean they're not living within their means. Obviously, they've cut down now. Just wanted to clarify because telling me to just tell my sister to not be extravagant isn't really helpful when it's already been done. And I'm sorry, but everyone is saying I'm favoring 2 adults over my young stepdaughter. But my niece is 14. She's a minor. YTA, you can't just throw your stepdaughter out who'll struggle with finding an apartment and paying rent, probably even more. Also, you said your sister and her family like extravagance, and therefore it's difficult for them. So perhaps give up the extravagance. I suggest that you find a compromise with your wife and don't throw your stepdaughter out into the blue. YTA, you're being unfair to H in that you're kicking out a 22-year-old who's working and has done absolutely nothing wrong in favor of 2 grown adults with jobs who can't be bothered to live within their means and are dragging their kid down with them. It's your property and of course you can do as you like, but don't delude yourself into thinking you're being fair because you're not. Stay tuned for more stories from Argo Relationships.